point. He's pointing to the defendant, Mr. Gaul. Well, what did you understand the nature of the relationship was in November of 2016?
They'd broken up recently.
And you recall the Central High School Fulton playoff football game on November 18, 2016?
Yes, sir.
Did you guys win?
We did. 20-6.
All right. And was there any celebration that was going to happen after that game?
Yeah, everybody planned to go to cookout afterwards, and I'd gone home to change clothes before I went to hang out with everybody.
Okay. Where was the plan as far as the hangout that night?
Sarah Seaton's house on Tazewell Pike.
Okay. Is that at 4218 Tazewell?
Yes, sir.
And is that a normal hangout for Central High School students?
Yeah, we've been there a few times.
Okay. Is that in your group of friends? Do you move houses, or was the Seaton's house kind of a mainstay in the party?
Typically the Seaton's house. We do Thanksgiving there.
Okay. And this night, when the plan was to meet at the Seaton's house,
Yes, sir.
but you said that you didn't go out to eat after the game.
No, sir.
Where did you go?
Home.
Okay. But eventually you went to the Seaton's house.
Yes.
All right. Well, after you arrive at the Seaton house, is there? What is the general ambiance? What are you guys doing when you get there?
We were listening to some music, eating snacks, talking, and watching some TV.
Okay. Do you, at some point, does your attention turn to Emma Walker and some things that are happening with Emma Walker that night?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you have a conversation with, or do you hear what is happening with Emma?
She left the room, and when she came back in, she asked for Zach to come be with her.
Okay. And who is Zach?
Zach Green was one of her pretty close friends.
Okay. And one of your friends too? And do you actually see her confer with Zach?
Yeah, he left the room and go talk to her.
Okay. After they go and confer or talk in another room, what happens next?
I think they went outside. I heard a back door shut.
Okay. And what do you become aware of after they exit the house?
They run back inside shortly afterwards and say that she'd been receiving some questionable text messages.
Okay. And in response to that, what do you do?
We asked her what was happening. She told the story that she had gotten a text message saying to come outside alone if she wanted to see.
Jackie here said just.
And without telling us what she said, what happens after she has communication with you? What do you all as a group decide to do?
Go see what she's talking about.
Okay. And so who is the group that goes outside?
It was me, Haley McDonald, Zach Green, and Marival Walker.
Okay. How about the adults there in the house?
Barry Seaton and Sarah Seaton.
Okay. And Barry Seaton, did he come outside or did he stay?
He stayed fairly close to the house, but he didn't go outside.
Okay. And did you see, before he went outside, was all this being communicated with Mr. Seaton as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We had gone upstairs till they came up the administration.
Okay. And so when you get outside, you said it's the four of you. You said Haley McDonald, Emma, you, and Zach.
Yes, sir.
And what do you do?
We'd seen a person down the road who we said was Riley, so she and Zach and Haley started running down there. I didn't want them to go down there alone, so I ran after them.
Okay. And do you know, you obviously know Riley Gaul, you identified him, right?
Yes, sir.
Who was it down at the street?
Riley Gaul.
What was he doing?
He was pacing back and forth at the road.
Okay. And what else? What was he doing?
Pacing back and forth with his hand on his head, just standing there.
And what did you perceive happened to him based on what he was doing, his pacing and holding his head?
I originally thought that maybe he'd been hit or something.
Okay. And did you get close enough to hear what was being said?
Yes, sir.
And what was Riley Gaul saying?
So when we got down there, I think they'd already been talking for a moment, and Emma was saying, "So are you telling me that you were kidnapped?" And he was going to the lines.
Okay. And what was Riley saying?
He said, "I don't know where I am, and my head hurts."
Okay. And were their voices normal or raised?
Raised, he was saying upset.
Okay. And what did Emma tell him after that?
I'm tired of stuff like this. I can't do this stuff like this anymore.
And how did he react to that?
He just got more angry and confused.
Okay. And what kinds of things was he saying back to her?
He's saying, "I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what happened."
Okay. Did you ever hear any discussion about his cell phone?
Yes.
Tell the members of the jury about that.
Emma asked him if he had his phone or something like that, and he said, no, I don't know where anything is. And I offered him my phone if he needed to call someone to pick him up or anything like that, and he refused because he didn't know anybody's phone numbers.
Okay. And he said that to you?
Yes, sir.
Did you, other than the issue about the phone, did you have any direct communication other than that, you offering up your phone because he didn't have his?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how did that encounter at the road end?
Emma started crying when she started walking back towards the house, and Riley turned and walked towards the Gibbs direction of Testifies Park.
Okay. So Tazewell Pike goes out to Gibbs or down towards the city?
Mm-hmm.
And he walked away towards Gibbs.
Yes, sir.
And at that point, you said Emma had walked up to the house. Where did people go from there?
We went back into the, I guess, wake room. It was a sitting area with a couch. There were 2 couches and a TV.
Okay, and what did you all do at that point?
She went with Haley to the bathroom because she was still crying really bad, and we went and sat down.
Okay, and you all, did you discuss what had happened?
We tried to keep the topics away from it, to try and lighten the mood and try to cheer her up.
Okay. If you had to characterize how upset she was, how would you characterize that?
She was incredibly distraught. Violently sobbing.
How long did it take her to calm down?
20 or 30 minutes or so.
And who was comforting her?
Haley and Zach and Sarah on the couch.
Did you spend the night that night?
No, sir.
What time did you leave?
Somewhere around 1 to 1:30.
Were you present when the blinds were pulled? What was the purpose of that?
Didn't know if anybody was still outside looking around.
Okay. How did you feel walking to your car?
It was a little bit nerve-wracking.
You yourself?
Yes, sir. I parked towards the street.
Okay. Did you walk alone?
Yes, sir.
Did you walk aware?
What?
Well, did you walk aware of your surroundings? I mean, were you-
I don't know the relevance of this testimony as it relates to, there's no charges against Mr. Baker, so I don't know how he was feeling is relevant to this case.
I'll move on. Do you remember what the defendant was wearing?
Gray sweatshirt and sweatpants.
Okay. And do you remember, you said that the defendant was holding his head.
Yes, sir.
Were you able to, from your vantage point, observe any injury on the defendant?
No, sir.
Did you look?
I was just saying if he was acting like he was okay. I didn't see anything.
And you just used the word acting. Did you believe he was acting or not?
I think that he was.
Okay.
He seemed fairly aware of his surroundings.
At any point, you told the jury that your conversation with him was about the phone because he said he didn't have a phone. At any point, does that change before he leaves? Okay. And describe, if you would, the circumstances of him exiting and Emma, the timing of that, if you would, for the jury.
He was still walking down there when Emma turned to walk away towards the house. He'd still been pacing a little bit, and then he just starts walking in the actual road towards the bike, and he turns around and sees that and starts walking faster towards the house.
Okay. And so parting at the same time. He's going up Tazewell Pike and you're going. Does anybody watch where he goes?
Just kind of turning around as we walk, I think.
Okay. Pass witness.
Are you, I missed the first part of that, Mr. Bacon. Are you a student at, where do you go to school?
Central High School.
Are you a senior?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you known Emma? I'm sorry.
I've known her since 6th grade.
Okay. How long have you known Riley?
My freshman year.
Okay, so you've known him, what now, I guess 3 or 4 years, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You weren't friends with Riley?
No, I knew him because he was on the 14th.
I beg your pardon?
I knew him because he was on the football team.
Yes, sir. Did you watch him play football at Central?
Yes, I often went to the football games.
And you were aware, I guess you and Emma were in the same grade?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so you were aware that she had feelings for Riley back when she was a freshman?
Yes, sir.
She would have been 14 at the time?
Yes, sir.
And you'd agree with me that he would have been 16 at that time if he was a junior, roughly?
I believe so.
Okay. And you all, you observed this relationship between Emma and Riley over the 2-year period of time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you would agree that Emma had strong feelings about Riley?
I would assume so. I never directly talked to her about her feelings for Riley.
Okay. Some people have characterized this relationship as off and on.
Yes, sir.
Would you agree with that characterization?
Yes, sir.
Would you add anything or take anything away from that characterization?
I know there have been several times when I've seen Untitled relationship. I never asked her.
You didn't know what that was about?
No, I've never asked her like when it happened or what
Right.
caused them to break up that time.
Right. Could have been as much her as him and vice versa?
I have no idea.
You didn't have an idea? Right.
Correct.
Okay. And this hanging out that y'all did at Sarah Seaton's on November the 18th of 2016, that was something that was typical of your friend group?
Yes, sir.
And you all would hang out at other places as well?
Yes.
Lily Resmondo?
I have not been there at this time. I haven't been to her house yet.
Okay. What other places other than Sarah Seaton's would you hang out at?
That had been the main place that I had been to.
Okay. And you had seen Riley over there before he graduated high school?
Yes. Wait. No, sir.
Okay. Had you been over there before he had graduated high school in 2016?
I do not believe so.
So you didn't start going until after 2000, until about this time
I
period?
started going around that year. Yeah.
Your sophomore year?
I think so.
Okay.
2016, the beginning of that school year, we started hanging out over there.
So he had already graduated?
I
Or,
believe so.
okay. So you wouldn't have any idea him being at the Sarah Seaton
Yes, sir.
before you ever started going over there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you see Barry Seaton that night?
Yes, sir.
And did you know Jill and Mark Walker?
I know who they were. I never directly spoken to.
And you're aware that nobody that night in your friend group on November the 18th contacted Jill or Mark Walker about those events?
I have no clue. I kind of thought that they would have talked to them.
Okay. But if the evidence showed that she hadn't, you wouldn't disagree with that? Okay. At least that's the things were going on that night, right? You wouldn't disagree with that?
I would have assumed she would talk to her parents about it.
Okay. But if she didn't until later, maybe the next day, you would not disagree with that?
I wouldn't have any knowledge to do that.
But you're not aware of anybody in that friend group while you all are in the house with the windows, with the blinds closed, you're not aware of anybody calling Jill or Mark Walker?
No, sir.
And you're not aware of law enforcement did not show up that night?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, you left about 1 o'clock that morning? Yeah. So, did you actually went outside, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at some point in time, Barry Seaton went outside?
Yes, sir.
And at some point in time, Barry Seaton went back in the house?
Around the time that we were walking back towards the house.
Okay, so your testimony is everybody sort of went back in at the same time?
He had gone in the house before us because he was closer to the house.
Okay. He didn't go down and talk to Riley?
No, he stayed fairly close to the house.
Okay. But he went in before Riley left?
No, sir.
About the same
He was
time?
still around outside.
Okay. Would you agree that you've seen Riley do other things to try to get Emma's attention?
I've seen him speak to her on the sidelines of football games before.
Okay. Anything else?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Over the 2-year period of their relationship, do you agree or disagree that Riley liked having Emma's attention?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Emma had strong feelings for Riley.
I would assume so.
And your opinion is Riley had strong feelings for Emma.
Yes, sir.
The friend group that you had really didn't like Riley.
Yes, sir.
And I think you told maybe you talked to a detective in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
You told that detective that you all just tolerated Riley because Emma really had feelings for him.
Yes.
And that interview that you had with law enforcement was on December the 1st, 2016?
Yes, sir.
James Hurst, does that name ring a bell, detective?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At no time of the events you just testified to about November the 18th, did Riley ever make a threat or anything to Emma?
Not that I heard.
Okay. You mean not that you heard that night or not that you heard before that?
I didn't hear anything that night because I only heard part of the conversation.
Okay. But any time before November the 18th, you've never heard of Riley making threats towards Emma?
I did not ask him about it. She didn't tell me.
You don't recall Detective Hurst asking you, were there other times that Riley had threatened her or anything like that? You don't remember telling Detective Hurst no?
I vaguely,
Okay. Well, is it accurate?
I think so.
But let's do it this way. If you had felt like Riley had threatened Emma at some time, would you have taken some type of action about that?
I would hope that I would have.
Okay. And so have you taken any action to remediate some type of, or to fix or repair some type of threat that Riley would have made?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did this friend group that went outside on November the 18th, did they have an idea that it was Riley outside?
That's who they thought it was.
Okay, why?
It looked vaguely like him from a distance around the same Maryville.
So nobody actually saw Riley Gaul out there until after, nobody actually went out the second time until actually they saw Riley, right? Let me do it this way. That's a terrible question. Let me clean that up a little bit. So Zach and Emma go outside at some point, right?
Yes, sir.
And then they come back in.
Yes, sir.
They've not seen anybody.
They saw someone laying on the ground.
Okay. And then at that point, people look outside and they realize it's Riley or think that it's Riley.
Yes, sir.
And then Emma goes back outside.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Had you witnessed other arguments between Emma and Riley prior to November the 18th?
I had seen her upset on one other occasion. We had a bonfire at Seth Armstrong's house several months prior to this where Riley was present. I got there fairly late, and I had seen both of them walk away when Riley was going to leave, and they came back upset and didn't say anything about it.
But did you actually see them argue?
No, sir.
Okay. So when they argued, she would get upset,
Yes, sir.
and she was upset after he left on November the 18th.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bacon, thank you.
Zach Green. Continue. Zach Green.
All right, everybody, you're watching a live feed in the William Riley Gaul case out of Tennessee. That was the testimony of Max Bacon, a friend of Emma Walker, the victim in this case, talking about what happened in the night in court. Remember, this is all taking place over the course of a few days. And in this night, this is when, according to the prosecution, the defendant went over to Sarah Seaton's house and made up this excuse that he was being kidnapped. And at that point is what this discussion is about. Was he making this kidnapping up to try to stalk Emma Walker? And you heard from Max Bacon himself, and under the defense's cross-examination, really trying to point to the fact was, you knew that they loved each other, you didn't know the full details of their relationship, and really trying to press about some of those details. We have the next witness on the stand. Let's listen in.
And where do you live?
I live at 31.
You live here in Knoxville?
Oh, yeah, not bad.
Live here in Knoxville. What school do you go to?
I go to Public.
Okay. And when did you graduate from high school?
Last year.
And what high school did you go to?
Central High School.
Okay. And so in terms of what grade you were in relation to Emma Walker,
I was a senior.
when she was a junior, when she died? And describe, if you would, what your nature of your relationship was with Emma.
She's one of my best friends. We're really close.
Okay. And how often would you communicate with her?
I'd say a little bit every week. I mean, we have school together, so I see her all the time in school.
Okay. Were you in the same class track, or did you share classes together?
We share classes together, yeah.
Okay. And how is it that you would mostly communicate with Emma? Would it be in person or through
A little bit of both.
through text messaging and your cell phones? Okay. And did Emma discuss with you, or were you aware that Emma had a boyfriend at some point? And who was her boyfriend her junior year?
Rather well.
And is he here in the courtroom?
Yes.
Point him out for the judge and the jury. Would you record reflect he's identified the defendant? Records so reflect. At some point, though, you become aware that the relationship that Riley and Emma have, rather that they had together, had come to an end? And when was that in relationship to when Emma died, that you found that out?
Probably like a week or two before.
And how would you characterize their relationship?
Unhealthy, toxic.
How so? Why?
He was just very controlling.
And as you, as her friend, how did you respond to that in terms of your advice to Emma?
I was trying to support her in whatever decision she kind of made.
Okay. And would you support her in her decision to leave or stay?
Yeah.
Okay. And which way did you lean?
Leaving him.
And you, back in November of 2016, you were a senior. You recall the football team had an extended season that year. You in the playoff games on November 18, 2016 against Fulton. You remember that's the weekend Emma died? And were you part of a group of students who convened together after the football game?
Yes.
And you all went to the football game? And where was it that you were convening after the football game?
CRC.
And is that something you had done in the past?
Yeah.
And you were part of a group of people that were there? And describe, if you were, the atmosphere when you get there. What kinds of things are you guys doing?
We were hanging out in the living room, just talking.
About what time do you think you got there?
Like 11:30.
Okay.
Late.
And at some point, does Emma alarm you or alert you to something happening to her or with her?
Yeah, I'm on the Sarah's house. I walk in and she's like, I guess going to the bathroom in front of me, and she's getting some weird text messages.
And she tells you she tells you about that? And does she share those with you? Do you actually look at them and see them? And what's the nature of those text messages that you can see on her phone?
The person was saying that they were kidnapped. Come outside alone if you don't want to see one of your loved ones get hurt.
Okay. And how did she respond to that?
She was shaking. She didn't know what to think of them.
Okay. And what did you advise her?
She's like, I'm going to go outside, and so I went with her.
Okay. You personally went outside with her? And where do the Setons live? And where did you go out the front door, back door, or how'd you exit the house? Back door? And where did you go when you went out the back door of the Seatons?
Back door, we went off the deck, and kind of where all the cars were, and we walked a little bit. We looked, we didn't see anyone.
Okay, the Seatons have a big yard, a lot of cars parked there. Most of the kids that come to the party have cars?
Yeah.
Okay. And so how many cars are there in the yard there when you go out?
Maybe like 6 or 7.
Okay. So when you go out this first time, you don't see anything, you said? Okay. And what happens next?
So then we go back inside, we sit back with everyone else, we're on the couch, and she gets a text message, and it's like, what do you not understand about coming outside alone?
Okay. How'd you respond to that?
She was freaking out a little bit. She kind of kept to herself in the text, like she would text it back, and then if something else like shook her, she would say that.
So you were right there with her
Yeah.
this whole time? You didn't leave her side?
She went to another room for a little bit, and then she came back out and got me because my phone wasn't on the other side.
Okay. So at some point, do the text messages leave you outside again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Describe the circumstances of that to the jury.
She comes back in the room that I'm in. She's like, Zach, let's go. When you go outside, we walk back outside, and then we see a figure laying down on the ground. I grab her.
Where is that? Where is the figure laying on the ground?
Outside, kind of in the front yard.
Okay. Describe the length, if you would, of the driveway of the Seaton residence. How long would you say it is? Are you good with distances before we do this? Okay. Could you throw a baseball and hit the end of the driveway?
Yeah.
Okay. And or how many cars do you think could be parked up and down the driveway lengthwise?
I would probably say 5 or 6.
Okay. And he's at the bottom of the driveway, or
He's
in the
kind of like in the middle, kind of close to the top.
Okay. And what you said, lying down,
Like face down.
just in a prone position. How do you
Face down,
describe
kind of
that?
like this, like covering his face, make sure his face is kind of hidden.
Okay. And what is he? Is he making any noise?
I don't hear any noise. I was just scared there was like a figure. So then I got her and we went back outside the house.
Okay. Obviously, it was obvious to you it was a person.
Yeah.
Was the person moving? And you said you don't recall if the person was making noises. Okay. So you see a figure, then you come back inside. What happens next?
I said, like, tell them, like, there's someone outside. And so then the commotion wakes up Sarah's dad.
Okay.
And he comes downstairs.
So Mr. Seaton is a part of this, what is about to happen next? Okay. And what is about to happen next?
Not everyone, me, Emma, Max, and Haley, and Barry go outside.
And Barry's Mr. Seaton?
Yes.
Okay.
And when we go outside, we see that Riley has gone up and is walking down Haswell Pike.
Okay. You named him Riley this time. At this point, did you know that it was Riley? Or had you known that?
Like, he was walking through a road light, and I saw him.
Okay. So up until this point, you didn't know that it was Riley Gaul? Okay. So when you go outside, where's Mr. Seaton? When you
He's
go
like towards the back. We see who it is, and then Emma makes a beeline for Riley, and so we follow her.
Okay. So Mr. Seaton at that point knows that it's somebody you know, that it's not a stranger laying around out in his yard? Okay. So he stays back? And who is it that, are you close to her as she's heading down towards him?
Yeah, I'm not behind him.
Okay. And describe that interaction when she gets down to him.
She's shaking. She's just asking, like, why are you here? Why are you here? And he keeps holding his head, like, I don't know how I got here. I was kidnapped. I don't know what happened. Where am I?
Okay. Could you tell whether or not that was real?
I think he was faking it.
Okay. It's just based on human experience?
Yeah.
Okay. And what kinds of things was Emma saying to him?
Just asking him everything, like, why are you here? Why are you doing this? Like, why are you here? You need to go.
Okay. And how do you respond to that?
He just holding his head, playing it up like he got kidnapped.
Okay. Do you recall anything about his phone? Any discussion between Max Bacon and him regarding the phone?
Nothing.
Okay. But there's other discussion down there at the road? How does it all end?
Ends up with us walking back to the house and then going somewhere.
Okay. And does Emma make it clear what she wants to happen?
Yeah, she wants him to leave.
And when he leaves, which way does he go?
He goes towards, like, he's going away from Central, like towards Bella.
Okay. And that's away from the city? And is he walking in the yard or walking on the
He's
street?
walking on the street.
And as he's leaving, what do you do?
We get Emma, we bring her back inside.
And describe Emma's affect or her emotional
She's
state.
crying, she's just really shaking up everything that just happened.
Okay. Is she frightened?
Yes.
How long does it take for you folks to calm her down?
I would say like maybe 30, 40 minutes, you're just trying to realize everything that just happened and try to calm her down and just get ready to go to bed.
Okay. Were you dealing with this individually or was the group dealing
It's
with
like a collective.
you and all the friends? And who else was there?
Keegan, Lily, Max, me, Haley.
Okay. And did you end up spending the night that night? Had you done that before?
Yeah.
Do you recall what happened the next morning when Emma left?
We just like, we go get breakfast at Chick-fil-A and then we all just go to work.
Was that the last time you saw him alive? You said that you didn't think it was real, that you thought he was faking it. Do you recall Emma saying anything in that regard to him?
Not that I can remember.
Do you recall after, well, in this period where Emma was, you said it, kind of the group was trying to get her to calm down, do you remember anything with regard to the windows and blinds?
We shut all the windows and doors.
Why is that?
But she was scared.
Passwords.
Just a moment, John. I understand. It's a little different when we're doing this and we're just out on the street maybe talking, but I understand. It just helps us a little bit. Okay. Talk a little bit about you witnessed the relationship between Riley and Emma over the course of their 2-year relationship,
Yes, sir.
and you would agree with me that that started when she was 14 and he was 16. And did I understand that you're through school now?
Yes, sir.
Are you in college?
I'm in college now.
Okay, where are you attending school?
LCD.
And you would agree with me that you're a little smarter and a little more mature today than you were back when you were 14, 16 years old.
Yes.
The relationship between Emma and Riley, had you known Emma to have a relationship before she had dated Riley? Okay. And you didn't know Riley other than through Emma. Is that a fair statement? You didn't like Riley before November 2016. And there's been some references that Emma and Riley's relationship was, for that 2-year period, on and off.
Yes.
And obviously when it was on, they would communicate with each other, right? And then when it was off, were you aware that they would communicate with each other by text message, by phone calls and things of that nature?
Yes.
Okay. And if Do you have an idea of how many times it was on and off? Okay. If I said about 10 times, would you tend to agree or disagree with that? More or less?
A little less.
Okay. And the events that you have described, I think, the hanging out at Sarah Seaton's house on November the 18th, had you been over to Miss Seaton's house prior to November the 18th, 2016, for one of those kind of hanging out type events? And that was typical of what your friend group did after football games.
Yes.
And that started, when did that start that you all would start having those hanging out type experiences like
It
that?
kind of just feel like happened at the football game where we go into like my house.
Yes, sir. There's a poorly worded question. I apologize. So we've talked about November.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Law and Crime Network. I'm your host for this afternoon, Rachel Stockman, and I'm here alongside Venu Varghese and Mark Aguilar. She's on the phone via Skype. Tell us a little bit, Mark, if you could, what do you make of this case?
I mean, visibly saw that, not like through a text message or things of that nature. You would see them physically talk to each other and argue. Okay. And they argued on November the 18th. Okay. Would they argue when they were on?
What do you know?
Well, when they're dating, it would, this on and off thing, I'm just sort of going with what everybody's been saying. So there's hanging out, dating. I think we call it going steady, but there's so many different levels now. I'm a little confused, but my point is when they were getting along, they would argue sometimes. You witnessed that?
Sometimes.
Okay. And then when they weren't getting along, they argued sometimes. Okay. And you witnessed that. And they argued on November the 18th of 2016 at the Seaton residence.
Yes.
Okay. Had you witnessed Riley do other things to get Emma's attention?
Yes.
For example?
One time we were at the pool and he sat and read a book until she decided to show up.
Okay. Okay. You remember what kind of book he was reading?
No.
And did she show up that day?
I can't recall.
Okay. Did he finish the book?
Probably wrong.
Okay. All right. Anything else that he would do to try to get her attention?
There was one time at school he would just sit outside of class waiting for her to come out or wait for her to come out in the middle of class so they could talk.
Okay. Emma had strong feelings for him throughout their relationship. And he had strong feelings for her. Do you remember talking to Detective Merritt in this case?
Yes.
Did you know that that interview was being recorded?
Yes.
And as part of that interview, I want to talk with you a little bit about some of the things that you said in that interview. And you've testified to some of it here, but you said that Emma showed you some text messages from a random number on November the 18th.
Yes.
And you looked at those.
Yes.
And you looked at those before you all went out the first time?
I can't recall.
Okay. But before you went out the second time?
Yes.
And as I understand it, your testimony is you and Emma went outside 3 times. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. So the first time she asked you to go outside, you go outside with her.
Yes.
And you don't see anybody. Okay. Did you have an idea who this may be?
In the back of my mind, I take that down.
And who did you have in the back of your mind?
Riley.
And who did Emma have in the back of her mind that it
I think
was?
she knew it was Riley.
Okay.
I knew it.
Okay. And so then you all go outside for a minute and don't see anybody and then come back in.
Correct.
Okay. And then it was about 30 to 45 minutes after that you all went back out the second time.
Yes.
And that would have been after you had reviewed the text messages.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you if you recall these various messages as it relates to what you said you saw. Stop playing around and do as I say. You remember that? Okay. Drive to the bottom of the driveway. If you don't by 11:50, I will hurt them. Bring no one. Okay. Do you recall seeing Emma's response to that where she says, I know you're one of Riley's friends, but stop? And the person in the text says, I won't harm you, just do as I say, and he won't be hurt. And then Emma responds, I'll just call the cops. And then the number says, have it your way. Okay. You recall her sending back another message that says, I know you're Riley's friend, I'm not stupid, and you won't hurt him. And then you don't recall her saying she's going to block this anonymous number? You remember that? Okay. Do you remember her telling the anonymous number that I broke up with Riley, so chill? Do you recall her saying, I know Riley put you up to this, LOL, I'm not dumb? Do you recall her saying, I'm blocking you, this is bullshit?
I'm blocking you, not the second part.
You don't remember the bullshit part? Okay. Do you recall seeing the message where he says, the anonymous number says, he's in the ditch beside her house? Remember, is that then when you all went outside?
They waited maybe a few minutes, they were moving outside.
Okay, and so the time period, I think your testimony was a moment ago that it was 30 to 45 minutes from the first time you went out to the second time. Okay. Nowhere in the messages that you received or that you saw did you see that this person was threatening harm towards Emma. Is that right? And I think you said Emma had a pretty good idea this may be Riley as well. Did you tell her to go outside?
I can't recall.
You can't recall if you told Emma to go outside and see Riley?
No.
Did you tell Emma to go outside to see Riley?
No.
Did Lily Resmondo,
No.
anybody else in this group, tell her to go outside?
No.
It was her idea to go outside, correct? And so you all go outside, and before you go outside, did you know it was Riley out there? I mean, did you see him?
Yes, sir.
Okay, when was it that you referenced earlier in your direct examination about the light?
When we came back outside with everyone else.
The third time?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall hearing Haley McDonald say to Emma, hey, that's Riley outside?
I can't recall.
Okay. You said Riley had on sweatpants?
I can't recall.
Okay. Did he normally wear sweatpants?
Yes.
Sweatshirt?
Yes, sir.
I mean, even when you went to school with him at Central?
Yes.
wonder if I can switch this back over. Am I still hooked up? Maybe you don't need to switch it. I think it's on one. I'm one. Mr. Green, do you see what's displayed? You've got a monitor there, is that correct? And that's the same thing we're looking at up here, correct? Okay. That's the driveway. That's Sarah Seaton's driveway. You agree with that?
Yes.
All right. And so if I sort of pan around this way, and I start going down Tazewell Pike where this yellow line is, which way am I headed?
Sure.
Towards town?
No.
Away from town? Okay. All right, and so is this the path walking down this yellow line or somewhere on this road that you say Riley walked away?
Yes.
And that's after Emma asked him to leave?
Yes.
Okay. So he would be walking in the direction of that car that's coming?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been introduced as Exhibit 19. Would you agree with me that what we're seeing, I'll hold it up, here's the way it says, you see it okay, Mr. Green? That what we're seeing here is the road that would lead away from town where you're saying Riley was walking away.
Yes.
If you would just put, with red, if you would just take this marker and have it where pointed in the arrow in the lane of which way Riley was walking away, please. Now, after he walked away, you said, I was like, we should call the police.
Yes.
And you didn't. And the reason you didn't was because Barry said, like, no, because he's done crazy things like this before, so we're like, okay. That's what Barry said.
On this line, yes.
And that's why y'all didn't call. You also told Detective Merritt, because he didn't seem like, he didn't pose any threat, he didn't like try to lunge at us or anything, so we were just like, and he walked on his own, like as soon as we left, he was walking away too. You agree that you said all those things? And all those things are true? Now, in your direct examination, you said that the reason you all closed the blinds was that Emma was scared. Okay. And would you agree with me that there's a difference between being scared and being startled?
No.
I mean, if I jumped at you, that would startle you, right?
Yes.
Would that also scare you, knowing that there's a couple of sheriff's deputies sitting over there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So scared and startled is the same to you?
Yes.
Okay. You think there may be different meanings for those words?
Could be.
You didn't tell Detective Merritt that Emma was scared when y'all closed the blinds, did you?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah.
You didn't use the word startled?
I put it up there.
Okay. Again, this friend group didn't like Riley, and you don't like him. Just a moment, sir. Mr. Green, thank you. I have no more questions.
He asked you, Mr. Green, a couple of questions specifically about the content of the communication between Emma and the anonymous number. Were you also aware that the anonymous number was calling Emma as well? And were you able to hear with your own ears the voices that were coming out over Emma's phone? Okay. Was anybody able to hear that? Okay. Pass. Thank you.
So in addition to the text messages that this anonymous number had sent and Emma had communicated with, you're saying they were also telephone conversations?
I believe it was one or two.
Okay. You aware that Emma called that number? That's all I have.
All right, you can stay down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we need to do the lunch hour. So we'll break, lunch here, and we'll start back in an hour. Lunch break.
21. Oh, you would have to subtract 5 hours from UTC to get to Eastern time, so.
Part of that too, Your Honor, I think part of the stipulation, we'll submit this in a written stipulation. The Eastern time is based on daylight savings time since we operate under that. I think it's after November 6th, it's UTC -5. Before November 6th, it's UTC -4 for that adjustment when the daylight savings time changes. We'll clean that up at some point in time with a written stipulation so it'll be clear. But
That'll be fine as long as y'all keep up.
Right, and so for this particular record, the first entry, it says 11/19, 4:25 UTC time, which would, subtracting 5 hours, would have you at November 18th, 2016 at 11:25 at night for the first record. And what we were going to do is I'll read the outgoing calls and Detective Merritt will read the incoming. And so go to your car with your keys at 11:25. Go alone.
Who is this?
What part of alone wasn't clear?
Yeah, I'm not cause IDK who this is, LOL.
I don't want to hurt a loved one.
What?
I've got someone you love. If you don't comply, I will hurt them. If you tell anyone about this, I'll hurt them still.
Show me, LOL.
I hit the wrong button. No pictures. Stop playing around and do as I say. Drive to the bottom of the driveway. If you don't by 11:50, I will hurt them. Bring no one.
I know you're one of Riley's friends, but stop.
I won't harm you. Just do as I say, and he won't be hurt.
I'm just calling the cops.
Have it your way.
I know you're Riley's friend. I'm not stupid, and you won't hurt him. I'm blocking you.
I'm no one's friend. We have him now. You have until 11:50.
I broke up with Riley, so chill.
If you don't care about him anymore, then it shouldn't bother you. You've made your choice.
I know Riley's put you up to this, LOL. I'm not dumb.
We have him currently. He hasn't put anyone up to anything. If you're okay with him getting hurt, that's your choice.
I'm blocking you. This is bullshit.
You may want to answer his call. We're letting him have his phone call to anyone. We're letting him have his phone to call anyone before we hurt him. 4 minutes. Call the police and he dies. Your choice. We're allowing him one last chance to get a hold of you. You've made your choice. If you'd like to hear his crying and screams, give him a call. Until next time. He's in the ditch beside her house. It's a shame you can all of a sudden not value someone else's life. Repeated same text. He's in the ditch beside her house. It's a shame you can all of a sudden not value someone else's life. You might want to check on him. Since you don't care, just let him lay there. He was unconscious when we left him. That was your warning. We will be back. Next time it will be worse. Humiliation is fun too, and watching you make him out to be a crazy person made our night. See you soon. At 55 minutes after midnight, November 18th is the last text. And these are the calls from AppsVerse official records. And that would be exhibit number 21 published, Judge. Now call Haley McDonald. What I'm handing you has been marked as in evidence as exhibit number 3. If you could just look at that, that's an overview map of several addresses that are highlighted with flags. You just said that you were at what address?
4231.
Okay. If you could just sign Sep Donalon next to that flag on that exhibit number 2 so the jury knows that's your address. And that you marked it with an SD?
Yes, I know myself.
All right. And Mr. Donalon, how long had you lived there on Plummer back in November of 16?
Probably 9 years.
Okay.
That's
And
just this.
what do you do for a living?
I am a chef.
Okay. At a local restaurant?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been doing that?
I've been with the company for 15 and a half years.
Okay. And you do some long hours, obviously, as a chef. What's a typical shift, lengthy shift that you do?
Anywhere from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sometimes it's 8 a.m. until 10 p.m.
Okay. That's a long shift.
Yes.
So you're away from home a lot.
I am.
Do you recognize the fellow seated over here in the, I get orange
I do.
shirt? Who is that?
That is my stepson, Riley.
Okay. So your stepson, you were married to Riley's mother?
Yes.
Are you still married to Riley's mother?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you separated from Riley's mother?
Yes, sir.
Tell us, when is it, so at some point does Riley and your wife or Riley's mother live together at Plummer?
Yes, sir.
And how long, when you say you lived there for 9 years, did you live there 9 years with Riley and his mother?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What's Riley's mother's name?
Ashley.
And how long have you been married to Ashley?
How long have I been married to Ashley? I can't recall.
You don't remember the year you got married?
I don't.
You don't, do you remember your anniversary date?
I do not.
Okay. You're not together with Ashley anymore, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so, tell us, when is it that you split with Ashley?
4 years ago, 5 years ago. I know it was the summer. We actually moved apart. She moved out the summer before Riley's junior year.
Okay, so while Riley was in high school,
Right.
you and Ashley part ways.
Correct.
But prior to that, when did you come into Riley's life as a stepfather?
He was 6 years old.
Okay. So are you the only stepfather he's ever had?
I assume so. Yes.
Okay. And you essentially raised Riley
Correct.
with Ashley. And after Ashley moved out, what was where did she move to?
She moved in with her parents at Woods Inn.
Okay. We'll have Mr. Walker do that. And her parents are who?
Jimmy Walker and Amy Walker.
And they lived on Woods End. How far away is that from you?
For me,
Yeah.
5-6 minutes, maybe.
Okay. And were you aware, you said that she moved out before his junior year?
I believe it, yes.
Okay. And what was the custodial arrangement when she moved out before his junior year in terms of where Riley would go?
He actually continued to live with me most of the time, but about halfway through the football season that year, he started spending about half his time there and then half his time with me.
Okay. Do you have children with Ashley?
I do. I have a daughter,
So you have one biological with Ashley. What's her name?
Madison Lee Gaul.
Okay, so Madison and Riley are brother and sister?
Yes, sir.
Did Madison continue to stay with you on Plummer, or did she also?
She stayed with her mom and her grandparents, and then she stayed with me whenever I was off.
Okay. And the house on Plummer, describe what kind of house it is?
It was a ranch-style house, unfinished basement.
Okay. And the unfinished basement, did you keep that basement locked?
No, I had an outside dog. The dog actually used the unfinished basement kind of as a house, and goes in and out as it wanted to.
Okay. And what did you keep in the basement?
Just storage, more stuff.
At this point, though, Ashley had moved out,
Correct.
and in November of 2016, do you recall what was being stored down there?
Again, I think there was a refrigerator down there, just a hodgepodge of stuff.
stuff. I mean, there were clothes, broken furniture, just that kind of stuff, you know.
Okay. I'm going to turn your attention to November of 2016. Did you have, obviously you were aware that Riley went to Marival College, right?
Correct.
And he was playing on the football team?
Correct.
What was your level of contact once he went to college in terms of how often you would speak with him?
I occasionally talked to him on the weekends when he came in. I texted him whenever I could, just kind of find out what was going on. That was about it.
Okay, so you'd share communication via
Right.
your cell phone? And how often would you get together with him?
Like I said, if he was in town and I was off work, which was rare, I mean, I would try to meet up, always have dinner with him.
Okay. And did you keep up with Riley in terms of his emotional well-being and welfare and things like that?
I did, to the point of once everything started coming out with the suicide attempts, I was in contact with his mother a lot more, but I wasn't aware that he was having any kind of problems.
Okay.
Prior to that.
And those attempts you're talking about, when did you become aware of those happening?
He actually texted me after the first one.
Okay. Are we talking about Maryville College or Central High School?
Marival College.
Okay, so this is after he gets to college,
Right.
and you're aware he goes to college sometime the summer of 2000, late summer, early fall of 16, right? And you're aware that he's struggling, obviously, with that. Do you offer any assistance?
I texted his mother and said, hey, I think it would be a good idea if he would see counsel, obviously. That was kind of the extent of it. I talked to Robert personally about it, and he said it was a one-time thing.
Okay. I want to turn your attention to the weekend of November 21st, to the weekend before Thanksgiving in 2016. You recall that weekend?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you remember Emma Walker, receiving the news that Emma Walker died?
I didn't.
Okay. And if I were to tell you that was on a Monday of the preceding weekend, you recall that weekend?
I don't recall anything about the weekend.
Okay. The house that you had on Plummer back in November of 16, when you did Riley Gaul have access to the house back in November of 2016?
He did.
Okay, and how so?
He had a key to it.
Okay, and he was free to come and go,
Correct.
and that was your arrangement with Ashley?
Correct.
All right. And it continued beyond when he was in Maryville College?
Correct.
Okay. And you became aware, obviously, you knew at some point that Riley had his girlfriend, right, Emma Walker?
Right.
And were you aware of whether or not there was a link between his suicide efforts or attempts and his relationship with Emma?
I was not.
Okay. Now, let me turn your attention specifically to that weekend of the 16th, or rather the 21st. Do you remember when you heard that Emma had been killed?
I did.
Okay.
It was
And
Monday morning.
it was what?
Monday morning.
Okay.
Around 9 a.m.
And were you part of the conversation or part of the effort to figure out how Riley was doing with regard to that?
I did call his mother, and then I called his grandfather to try to find out his whereabouts. I was unsure if he actually knew about it yet.
Okay. So it was pretty startling news
Right.
to you folks? Okay. So on Monday morning, when you find out that she had died, when was the last time you had seen Riley?
I'm unsure of that.
Okay. Had it been weeks?
I can't remember.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you specifically about Saturday morning.
Okay.
Okay. And Saturday morning of the weekend that she died, the Saturday before, who did you eat breakfast with that morning?
I don't remember.
Okay. But you, we actually met outside of court before this case, right? And we discussed the issue of whether or not you would have eaten breakfast with Riley.
Correct.
And can you tell the jury whether or not you ate breakfast with Riley Saturday morning?
Judge, I'm going to object to ask and answer. He just said he couldn't recall who he ate breakfast with.
He can answer this question if he has an answer. Then we'll move on.
I can't recall who I had breakfast with that morning.
Okay. But did you, in response to that question and your inability to recollect, did you go ahead and look at your phone with regard to your
I
communication?
did look at my phone in regard to communication.
Okay. And in fact, on Saturday evening, did you not discover that you had communication with Riley on Saturday evening, in the early evening hours of Saturday?
I did.
And what was the nature of that communication you had with him Saturday?
I just asked him what he had been up to that day.
Okay. And so if you had had breakfast, did that make sense to you that you would have eaten breakfast with him and also have posed that question to him?
Maybe.
Okay.
What
color are they?
Black.
Okay. And do you recognize that?
I do not.
And what are those?
These are some Mr. Clean List Premium Blankets gloves.
Do you use Mr. Clean products or that product?
No.
Okay, go ahead and next.
Pair of shoes, Velcro, black. Looks like some type of electrical taser duct tape around them.
Okay. Do you recognize that?
Do not recognize those.
Another shoe. Okay, how about the
Lysol disposable latex gloves.
Okay. Do you ever use that product?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
9mm clip.
Okay.
Do not recognize that. Handgun. Do not recognize that.
Okay. And so for exhibit number 28, if these items were all in a garbage bag, all the items in exhibit number 28, do you have any knowledge of them being in your basement?
Other than you telling me that they were there.
Okay. And we had this conversation, right? That garbage bag containing these came out of your
Right.
basement? Okay. And that your stepson Riley took them out of your
Judge,
basement?
I want to object to leading, and it's a conversation that Mr. Allen's kind of getting into.
Do you recognize, do any of these items in Exhibit 28 have any business being in your?
I don't recognize any of this.
Okay. We're going to leave these marked for identification. We'll link those up to the photographs. So, Mr. Donilon, also before we spoke previous, you also looked at, prior to the weekend, you had queried or sent out a message to Mr. Gaul about the potential of meeting up during the weekend?
Yes, I did. I texted him that Friday, probably up, I think it was around 2 o'clock.
And that's how you two communicate, usually with text? And told him to let you know?
Yeah.
And you received?
I asked him if he was going to be in town that weekend. He said at some point, yes. He said if you want to get together, shoot me a text.
Okay. And what response did you get from that?
He said, cool, I'll let you know.
And what response did you get from thereafter?
I texted him at Saturday.
Okay, so any arrangement that you had for breakfast would probably have been made via
Right.
text? Okay. Password.
No question. And as the court's aware, I'm sure, of reading the presentment in this case, the state has only preferred presentment against Mr. Gaul on the offense of theft for exercising control over James Walker's gun, and he's going to be the next witness. And it's our position, Judge, that they've offered me a text message thread between Mr. Gaul and Mr. Walker that references events occurring before the investigation started. And if the court looks at the presentment says about that particular firearm and the tampering with the evidence charge, that knowing that an investigation was pending, and on November the 18th, 2016, when some of these text messages that the state intends to introduce through James Walker occurred, there was no investigation pending, and we say it is irrelevant under the state's theory that Mr. Gaul exercised control over property as opposed to knowingly obtained. This would go to the knowingly obtaining theory that they have not charged Mr. Gaul with. So that's, we would just renew our objection on that particular issue.
And I think you previously ruled on that we can put in proof of when we believe you claimed it.
Yes, I think on the record, this court ruled that the wording actually was the difference between constructional and actual taking, and that they were both simply, they would both be included in the charge of theft, and the court will allow them to state the use back impact as long as they do support the charge. So the objection will be all right, you've been raised to the jury?
Yes, sir.
And so, all right.
Sir, go ahead and state your full name and introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is James Wesley Walker.
Mr. Walker, where do you live?
I'm at 2311 Woods End Lane. And
May I approach you?
Sir.
Mr. Walker, what I'm going to hand you from the mark is in evidence is exhibit number 3. It has several addresses that are highlighted. I think I might have showed you this before trial. Do you see your address at 2311 Woods End there marked? Just take some time to orient yourself there.
yes,
If I could have you near your address, just write James Walker near where it marks your address on that exhibit. You're the third JW that's been here, so. That's exhibit 3. Mr. Walker, you said you live at Woods End Lane. Who do you live there with?
my wife Amelia, Amy,
Okay.
my youngest daughter Ashley, my granddaughter Madison.
How long have you lived there at Woods End?
24 years, I think, is correct. It might be a few months, either way right there.
Okay. And what did you do in your career for work?
Started years ago as I worked at East Tennessee Children as a respiratory tech. Several years in the automobile business. And now I'm a licensed unarmed security guard.
Okay. And at some point, though, did you work at Craig's Firearms?
Yes, sir, I sure did.
And tell us about that. When did you work at Craig's Firearms?
I couldn't be exact on the years, to be honest, but I was there for probably a year, but I couldn't tell you the dates. I just, for no other reason that I can recall, I just say.
Okay. But during your time at Craig's Firearms, Craig's supplies firearms to the Knoxville Police Department, or the police agencies in this area?
Primarily law enforcement. We did sell some weapons to the public, but it was very few. Very few.
And while you were there at Craig's, was it back in 2003? Did you purchase a firearm back in 2003?
I did.
And what kind of firearm was it?
Glock, 9mm.
Okay.
Long 19, if I'm not mistaken.
And so you have had that firearm since 2003?
Correct.
And can you tell the jury whether or not you have a permit to carry that firearm?
I did.
And when did you obtain that?
I'm gonna say that I've had that for probably roughly 10 years, maybe longer than that, but that'll be close.
Okay. And of course, to do that, you had to take a class and do range time, et cetera? Okay. And so, do you carry a firearm as a practice?
No.
Okay. Did you, back in November of 2016, carry a firearm? Well, let me ask you this. How often would you carry your firearm with you back in November of 2000, back in the fall of 2016?
On my person, never.
Okay. And so what was your habit as far as wearing your firearm, the one that we're talking about? You still had that in November of 16, right?
Correct.
Okay. What was your practice about where the gun would be stored when you were in your house versus out on the road doing things?
I would primarily have the gun in my bedroom in a dresser. When I did take it with me, I kept it under the seat of my automobile.
What kind of car do you drive?
2015 Honda Accord.
Can you tell the jury whether or not you had a practice with regard to any holster or a way to hold the gun?
I did.
And tell the jury what that was. What was your practice?
I generally never had it when it was not in a holster.
Okay. And so what reason would you have to take it out of the holster?
None unless I was getting ready for the front again. When I moved it to the holster.
Okay. And when you said that you kept it in I don't know how you said, a nightstand or a dresser in your bedroom?
Dresser.
Or under the seat of your car?
Correct.
Were there any other locations that gun would ever be in its holster?
Not that I remember.
Okay. And that's been your practice since you've owned it?
Correct.
Okay. You recognize the fellow seated at the table over next to counsel in the orange shirt?
Okay.
Who is that?
That's Riley Gaul.
And how are you related to Riley Gaul?
He's my grandson.
Okay. How long have you been in Riley's life?
He's 18 years old.
So his whole life?
He's mine.
But you're not his biological grandfather?
That's correct.
Okay. So how long have you and Amy been married? And Amy's his biological grandmother, right?
Correct.
And how long have you and Amy been married?
35 years.
Okay. And so, how involved have you been in Riley's life as he grew up?
Very.
Okay. And where did Riley live for the first, say, 16 years of his life? Where was he living?
Of course, he lived with his mother, and there were occasions where, they would live with us, depending on the situation that was going on.
Okay. So from time to time, they would live at Ashley, his mother,
Yeah, correct.
and Riley would live with you?
Correct.
And was there at some point where that kind of became permanent, that Ashley moved back in with you at Woods End?
Yes.
And she still lives with you now?
Correct.
When was it that became a permanent type thing, that Ashley, your stepdaughter, she's your stepdaughter, correct?
Yes, sir.
That Ashley, your stepdaughter, moved back into you? When was that?
It's roughly been a year and a half, 2 years. She's went through a divorce, and it just got to the point where that's what had to happen.
Okay. Her and Seth had split up?
Correct.
Do you recall what year Riley was in school when her and Seth split up?
No, I don't know,
Junior year in school? Did you take an active participative role in his school activities in terms of extracurricular activities, that is Riley's?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you were pretty proud of Riley as a football player?
That would put it mildly correct.
You were a fan of the Central Bobcats?
Absolutely.
And you followed Riley's football career?
Absolutely.
From what age?
I think he started playing when he was 7 or 8 years old.
And how many times would you say you've been in the stands watching him play?
From the beginning, hundreds.
Okay. And Riley is, can you tell me whether or not Riley is known for his speed?
Yes,
And do you know what his 40 dash time is and his 100 dash time is?
4.45,
Okay.
4.46.
That's a 40-yard dash?
Yeah.
And do you know what his 100-yard dash time was?
No, I can't recall.
Okay. But as far as his athleticism, what kind of athlete was he in high school?
But of course, I'm partial. Tremendous.
Tremendous athlete. He was a star. Did he play multiple sports?
He did.
What sports did he play?
He was participated in track and basketball in high school.
Okay. And you know 4.45 40 is a blazing fast speed.
Was it them?
Was he the fastest on the team in high school?
Probably.
Okay.
Probably.
And were you were you in the process of him selecting a college?
Yes.
And so you were obviously part of him going to Marival College?
We were with him when he made that decision and met with the coaching staff. Too.
Okay. And did you participate in that as well, like you did at Central High School by going to games and supporting him?
Absolutely.
All right. But you, prior to him going to Maryville College, you were aware, obviously, that Riley had a girlfriend, right?
Correct.
And what was her name?
Miss Emma.
Miss Emma, that's what you called her? Miss Emma?
Yeah.
Okay. And her name is Walker, like yours?
Correct.
And you're no relation to Emma Walker, right? Or the Jill and Mark Walker, or Evan Walker?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And how many occasions would you say, as Riley dated Emma, would you have contact there at Woods End with Emma?
At Woods End?
Yeah.
Numerous.
Okay. So you got to know her?
Absolutely.
And how long would you say their relationship was before she died? How long had they been dating, in your judgment?
A couple of years.
Okay. And did you, were you made aware at some point after Riley went to Maryville College that there were some difficulties that were happening in the relationship?
Yes.
Okay. How were you made aware of that? I mean, would you have communication with Riley directly, or was it just the family, or how? Okay. So discussion in the family. Did some things happen when he went to Maryville College that caused you concern about his emotional well-being?
Yes.
What was that?
He had just a tremendous emotional crisis. What I would call an emotional crisis. I'm not a doctor, but just had something that was completely out of character for us.
Because it really hadn't happened before he went to Maryville? Something like this? Okay. What was this emotional crisis that he had?
He attempted to take his life.
And when did that occur?
I've kind of blocked that out of my head, to be honest with you, but it was in the obviously first year because that's the length of time that he was there.
Okay. And of course, you remember when Emma died, right?
Absolutely.
If you give the jury your estimate of what time frame before Emma died did he attempt to take his life? Was it a week, a month,
Weeks.
a few weeks? I didn't even put words here. You said weeks, plural?
Weeks. Yes.
Okay. And how did you and your family react to that crisis?
Devastated.
Okay.
So
What did you do?
he was was taken to Blunt Memorial Hospital
Okay.
and admitted.
How long did he stay there?
Hours.
Okay. And what was the follow-up plan? As far as
He met with the psychologist at Maryval College.
Okay. And did the family support him in that effort? Of getting counseling through Maryville College, or did you have other things you wanted him to do?
I had other things I wanted to do as a grandparent. I would do so much.
Okay. And what did you attribute to Riley's emotional crisis that you just told the jury about? What did you attribute that to going on in his life?
Obviously, some tremendous conflict of some kind.
Okay. Were you ever privy to that? Do you know why?
No, sir.
Okay. So you never had any direct communication with Riley about why he had done that?
Not that I recall.
Okay. But nonetheless, you expressed to the jury you were worried about him?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to take you to the weekend that Emma died. You recall, of course, that came on a Monday morning, the news of that. Do you remember how you found out?
I did.
Who told you?
I got a phone call from John Clarke.
Okay. And that was on Monday morning. Okay, but I'm going to back you up to Friday. That Friday, did you have an opportunity on that Friday, the 18th of November? Did you have a reason to go to Maryville College on that Friday?
I did.
What time did you go to Maryville College?
Sometime in the morning. Early or late morning. Sorry.
What was the purpose of you going to Maryville College?
I had an appointment to put 4 new Michelins on Riley's car that he drove on that day.
Okay. And Riley had a car at Maryville College?
Yes.
And that car is registered to you?
I think it is to my wife now.
Okay. And what kind of car was that?
2009 Honda Accord.
What color?
Right.
Okay. And he kept that car with him at Maryville College?
Right.
All right. And so what was your plan as far as you going from Knoxville to Maryville College? How are you going to accomplish this with regard to his car?
I left my 15 Accord and took his 2009. And I had keys to my car and he was in class.
Okay. And what did you do with your car?
Left it in the parking lot.
Okay. What parking lot was it that you left the car in?
Outside the football dome.
Okay. Is that dorm or the Cooper Athletic Center? His dorm?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. Would that be Gamble Hall or Cooper Hall?
I can't.
Okay. But outside his dorm, where you located his car is where you left your car?
Correct.
Okay. And where did you leave it in respect to his car?
2-3 spaces.
Okay. But close by wherever his car was, that's where your car is?
Correct.
Okay. And how is it that you were able to get his keys to drive his car? Or
If I recall correctly, I texted him or called him and we met.
there at the cars?
Yeah, but to be honest with you, I can't remember. I mean, I have keys to that automobile as well, and that's been a long time ago. I can't recall that.
Okay. Well, regardless, you have the keys to the car that's registered to you that Riley's driving in Maryville. You would somehow get them either through Riley or you had a set?
Correct.
Okay. So your car gets left, you said 2 or 3 spaces from Riley's. What do you do with Riley's car?
Took it to First Service Tire on Broadway, and had tires for them.
Okay. And how long did that take you?
Hour and a half, 2 hours. the best of my knowledge.
Okay, and do you recall about what time you got back?
I did not.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right. You know, the only thing I can do is just want to get something like that. It was early afternoon.
Okay, early, but it wasn't late evening or anything like that, dark out or anything, early afternoon? All right, and so when you you get the tires and you come back to Maryville, do you have an opportunity to see Riley at that exchange when you're coming back to give him his car?
I did.
Okay, and how so?
If I recall correctly, I think I texted him and told him I was back. And he said he'd be out when he was out of class.
Okay,
That's it.
okay, so taking you now to the point, you're back at the hall, you've exchanged whatever needs to be exchanged, and you're now getting back in your car?
Correct.
Is Riley with you when you get back in your car?
No, sir.
All right, when you get back in your car, what's the first thing that you do when you get in your car?
Started. Reached down to sleep.
Why'd you reach under the seat?
Had it.
And what did you feel?
Holster.
There's a gun in the holster.
No, sir.
And what did you think?
Problem.
And you are a carry concealed permit holder, right? You said that? When you say it was a problem, how big of a problem was it?
There's no bigger problem.
Okay.
For me.
And so what was your concern? Where was your mind?
Need to figure out what the gun was.
Okay, and what did you suspect?
Didn't suspect anything at that second. I immediately contacted Riley.
Okay, and what did you say to Riley?
You know anything about my weapon?
And how did he respond?
That he did not.
And what did you do from there?
I contacted his mother.
Did you have a discussion with his mother?
I did.
Did you believe him that he didn't have the gun?
Up until that point, sir, I never had any reason to not believe Riley.
Okay. You said you contacted his mother. What kind of plan did y'all come up with?
She was going to come out that immediately and investigate further.
So this was immediate. Had you even left Marival College at this point before this stuff takes place?
No, sir.
At some point, do you leave Maryville College? Your stepdaughter Ashley, what is she going to do according to your plan?
She's going to take a look at Riley's room and do see if there's any way that weapon is there.
Okay. And do you know if that happened?
What?
Did she search his room?
Yes, sir.
His dorm room?
Yes, sir.
Did you recover your weapon then?
Did not.
Okay. And so this is in the early afternoon of Friday. When you get home, what do you do?
About this frantic search in regards to my entire house, thinking that there was a possibility that I had left him at the house.
Okay. But you never take that gun out of that holster, right?
As a rule. As a rule.
But you still search the house. You just described that as frantically.
As frantically wasn't every inch of the house.
And were you able to recover or find the weapon?
No.
And take us to the next day, Saturday. Did you see Riley on that weekend? Let me ask you first on Friday night. Do you recall if you saw Riley Friday night?
I don't recall.
Okay. And what about Saturday?
It seems like I did, but I can't recall.
Okay. Well, there was in your mind at least some semblance of a suspicion that Riley might have the gun. And was that still in your mind?
Oh, absolutely. Once I couldn't find, I was trying to put my hands on it.
Okay. So what efforts were you doing to try and get Riley, or at least talk to Riley or find out whether or not he has that gun? What other things? I know you told us about Ashley going to search the room. Was there anything else you did?
We're on Saturday now. We're on Saturday.
Well, from the time Ashley searches his room until you report it to the police.
The only other thing that I recall doing on Friday is contacting the head football coach of Marival.
Okay. And you called him and you told him what?
Told him what happened with the weapon. And,
Why'd you call the head football coach at Maryville?
well, he had obviously been aware of the issues that we had in a short amount of time before that.
Okay, so what was your concern that was what would possibly happen if Riley had the gun?
That he would hurt himself.
Okay. Did the football team or football coach do anything to your knowledge?
He did not.
Okay. Do you know whether or not Riley came home that weekend? After you changed the tires, you said you thought you might have seen him Saturday?
Yeah, but I can't recall.
Okay. But in that weekend, from the time your gun goes missing to the time you report it, when is it that you actually report it missing?
The first call I made was on Saturday.
Okay,
Don't recall the time. It seemed like it was late afternoon. Called tell her.
May I approach? Sir? Okay, you're telling the jury that you called teleserve on Saturday?
That's the best I can remember. Yeah.
Okay. And teleserve is what with the police department?
That's the non-emergency for the people.
Okay, so you're not asking for a patrol officer, you're just reporting an issue?
Correct.
Okay. Did you get through on Saturday?
I did not.
Okay. When did you finally get through the KPD?
Sunday.
Okay. And did you speak with an officer?
I did.
And did you report your gun stolen?
Yes, sir.
And did you provide them the details of the type of gun that you had?
Yes.
How is it that you knew you had, how is it that you knew the details of the gun that was missing from your car?
Because I had the box, it came in one box.
And so the pistol that you bought in 2003 was brand new? And when it was brand new, was it shipped with all the accoutrements that a Glock pistol comes with?
Yes, sir.
All the accessories and things like that?
Yes, sir.
And what are those types of accessories that come with a Glock pistol?
Magazines, the rings that they got from Gaul and the target.
And the case itself? And within that case, did you also keep any receipts or anything of that nature to identify the gun?
I did sit in my car.
Okay. And the gun itself, the gun case itself, did that also contain any identifying information?
Yeah, they all had on the edge the serial number.
Okay. And so you knew your gun and your serial number, right?
I didn't get it. The only way I know the serial number was to look at it.
Right. In terms of the use of that gun, how many times have you used the gun?
To my knowledge, I've never been in a round sit again.
You didn't use it for the carry conceal when you did the outdoor range portion of the carry concealed?
No.
Used a different weapon on that occasion?
Didn't.
How many weapons do you own?
Let me,
Okay. So when you had the carry concealed, you had a different weapon that you would have used?
that's correct.
Okay. So at this time, the only weapon in your household was this Glock?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as Exhibit number 30. If you would just look that over, Exhibit 30, and specifically the paragraph on the second page, and tell me if you know what that is.
Here.
The paragraph on the second page, just go to your second page and read that paragraph.
That appears in the report. I assume that's what that is, the report.
Okay, we move this in as a Knoxville Police Department incident number.
Judge, yes, based on his testimony, he assumes that that's a report. Maybe I don't know the foundations necessary for that. I understand what the report is, and I've seen it, but for disability purposes, I don't know what the foundations are laid. I know it's consistent with his testimony that he reported on November 20th, but
Is that what you received from the police department?
Did you receive a copy of the incident report? But you,
No, I'm not aware of it.
right, but you reviewed the incident report pre-trial?
No, sir.
When you met with me in the conference room over in the DA's office,
Yes,
you reviewed the report?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
And the dates and times and the, when you made the report to the police department, are those contained within this report? And are they accurate?
Yes. Which I don't know, is the 20th, is that Sunday?
It could be Sunday, yes.
That appears to be correct.
We move this in as Exhibit 30, the KPD police report. James Walker was theft at 2311 Woods End.
All right, if that's understanding, this is not what we generally refer to as a police report. It's his report of a missing gun that
Yes, sir.
taken with a gun. And what's in the report is simply a compilation of the information that the witness provided to the police.
Yes, sir.
And he's now about to say his accuracy, his accuracy. We'll allow him.
And what does the report tell you, the time that you called on Sunday for the purpose of reporting the gun stolen?
11:43
Is that's accurate? All right. And you provided the serial number and those, all the identifying characteristics of the gun on that date and time?
Correct.
And referencing Sunday, that afternoon, obviously, you reported the gun stolen, right? Do you have more communication with Riley on Sunday about the gun, if you recall?
Not that one,
Okay. How about person-to-person interaction? Does Riley come to the house that Sunday or Sunday evening?
He did.
Okay. And describe the circumstances and around the time frame that Riley was at your residence on Sunday evening.
Don't recall when he arrived. It seems, to the best of my knowledge, that I can remember, he left maybe at 9 or 10 o'clock.
Okay. What time do you go to bed, Mr. Walker?
I'm old.
6:30?
I'm a 10-ish.
10 o'clock?
Yeah,
Okay. And does Riley, and so you think Riley went to bed about the same time that you, Riley left about the same time you went to bed, 10-ish?
I can't recall, to be honest.
Okay, and what was he doing there at your house Sunday night? And we're talking about the night before you found out Emma died, right?
Correct.
That Sunday, and what was he doing there at your house?
He was on a laptop.
Okay. Whose laptop was he on?
If I recall correctly, he was on his.
Okay. And do you know, if you were privy to what he was doing, you know he had a laptop, but do you know what he was doing? Do you have any conversation with him about that?
No, the conversation we had was, he was writing a paper of some sort.
Okay. And but he leaves at 10 o'clock. Where is it that you understand he is going at 10 o'clock?
Back to school.
Okay. And is that the last time you see Riley that night?
To the best of my knowledge.
Okay. How about your wife? Does she stay up later than you or go to bed about the same time?
It just depends, varies.
Okay. So after he leaves, after working on his laptop, are you made aware that Riley ever comes back to the house that night? I mean, do you hear him or anything of that nature?
No, sir.
Okay. So the next thing after Riley leaves at 10 o'clock, the next thing you become aware of is an issue with Emma Walker that next morning, as it regards to Riley?
Yes.
Okay. And how is it that you hear about Emma?
A phone call from John Clarke.
Who is John Clarke?
He's another Fountain City individual that I've known for years.
Okay. And does he have sons that play football or grandsons that play football?
Yes, son, play.
Okay.
Marival.
And so your relationship with him is a football dad or football granddad in terms of having a person that played and being a fan and in the stands and things like that?
Correct.
Okay. And so you have mutual friends that you know over the years that have played either with Riley or against Riley or however that you have become close with?
Correct.
All right. And John Clarke alerts you that something has happened with Emma. How do you respond to that? What do you do?
I was devastated. Couldn't hardly move there. I was sitting in the parking lot.
You're pretty fond of Emma?
That's good to know.
Okay. And what do you do when you hear?
Well, the first thing I did was call my wife.
Do you remember what time it was?
She had been real close to 8 o'clock.
Okay.
I
Where were you?
sitting in the parking lot of Harvard Hospital.
What were you doing there?
Had a job interview.
Okay. And did you go to that job interview?
I did for roughly 10 minutes.
Okay. And what was the plan as far as Riley was concerned now that you knew that something bad had happened? Let me ask you this. What did you understand had happened to Emma at this point?
I didn't have a clue.
Okay. Did you know she was dead?
That's what I was told.
Okay. And you didn't know how or what had happened to her?
Correct.
Okay. What was your concern when you knew Emma was dead?
What was my concern?
Yes.
Well, other than I was devastated and shocked. The first thing that I needed to do was reach out to my grandson.
Okay. And you spoke to your wife about that? What was the family plan as to what you were going to do?
They were headed straight out to Marival College. Actually, my wife,
Okay. And what were you going to do?
Marival College, but
Meet them? And do you in fact meet them?
yes,
Where do you meet them?
at Marival.
Okay. And where is Riley when you meet them?
Well, when I first pulled up, best I can remember, he was there with Ashley and Amy and David Martin.
Okay. David Martin's the coach.
Yes.
See the same coach do you discuss the gun issue with?
No, sir.
Okay. And David Martin was there with him, and what was happening?
Just a lot of pain.
Okay.
A lot of devastation.
How was Riley acting?
Like somebody that's completely devastated.
Okay. Did he know at this point, or had anybody disclosed to him that Emma was dead?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. But he knew that something was wrong with Emma?
Yes.
Okay. So when you describe him as being devastated, what is he devastated about in your mind at this point?
That Emma was hurt.
Okay. Does anybody tell him at that point that she's gone?
No.
Okay. And where do you go from there?
Get back to our house.
Okay. And when you get back to your house, do you call anybody? Or do you speak to anybody about Riley?
I made one phone call that I was aware of.
Who'd you make a phone call to?
David.
David Wise?
Yes.
And who is David Wise?
He's another Fountain City David.
Okay.
He has known Riley since he was 8 or 9 years old.
And he's also a lieutenant with the Knoxville Sheriff's Office, Knox County Sheriff's Office?
Correct.
And you know that, right? Okay. And what was the purpose of calling David Wise?
At that point, sir, I thought he might be able to be of some comfort to Riley.
Okay.
And that was it.
And does David Wise actually come to your house?
I can't recall if he'd been there before or not. Riley had been to David's house.
Oh, no, I mean, did David Wise actually come to your house after you called him?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately what time did that incident happen where David Wise comes?
I think it was 10 o'clock.
Okay. And does David Wise speak to Riley?
He does.
Okay.
Is it possible for me to get some water?
I guess
I
I'll
really appreciate it.
You want to break for a second while we get you water, or do you want to go ahead? Okay. What I'm handing you has been marked for identification as Exhibit 29. It's a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 photographs. And I want you to leaf through those if you would. Those 12 photographs. Mr. Walker, did you see those, the 12 photographs in that exhibit?
This may be a third.
And tell the members of the jury what those photographs are.
It's a copy of the receipt for the gun.
And what date did you buy the gun?
26, 2003.
And what did you pay for the gun?
$509. It's the box of the lock comes in. The inside of the box.
Is this basically the box and contents of your Glock pistol that was missing on Friday the 18th?
Yeah, this is the same thing you know.
Okay. If I could have you initial that, sign that, James Walker. That is your pistol box. And we'd move that in as Exhibit 29, 12 successive photographs, James Walker's box, Glock pistol.
No, no.
That you received.
Publish it. And what I'm handing you has been marked for identification as exhibit number 32. And I'm going to ask you, you had mentioned that Glock has a certain way they stamp their serial numbers. You had mentioned that Glock stamps their serial numbers. Can you see the serial number of the particular gun here?
Correct.
Is that your gun?
Yeah, if it's the same.
Okay. In exhibit number 29, we've got a serial number of FFU 071.
Correct.
So this photograph is your gun. If you would sign that, exhibit number 32 is James Walker's gun. And you don't know where that photograph was taken, right? That is your gun. Okay. We move that in as exhibit 32 photograph of Mr. Walker's gun.
You received one.
How is it that these photographs came to be taken of your gun case? What were the circumstances that somebody was able to photograph your gun case and the contents? How'd that happen? Okay. After Emma was gone, the police began an investigation. Did you become aware of that? Okay, and they actually came to your house and interviewed you, and you told them much of what you told me today. Okay. And also as part of that, you explained to the police that you had the case for your gun that was missing, right? And you gave them the case that is depicted in these pictures.
Yeah, when they came to the search warrant, I got the case.
Okay. And they had a search warrant come for the case. Right? And I noted in there, in the photographs, there's a yellow folder, or rather envelope, in with the Glock case. Are you familiar with what that is, based on your experience at Craig's Firearms?
I'm assuming that should be the 2 rounds with the fire from the law.
Okay. And explain that to the jury. What does Glock do when they ship a new firearm, or what did they do back in 2003?
They fire 2 rounds. When you shoot again, you have to target in those 2 rounds.
Okay. And those shell casings then had been ejected from that very exact weapon that was in the case. But that's your understanding of what those are, right? Okay. What I'm handing you is been marked as exhibit number 31, and I want you to take a look at that exhibit. Tell me what that exhibit is.
These are text messages between Ralph and Sue.
Okay. And those, you've had a chance to review those before trial, and those are accurate as to the communication between you and Riley on that weekend. And those actually reflect you asking Riley about the gun and its whereabouts, right?
Correct.
We move that as 31 text communication between James Walker and Riley Gaul. Mr. Walker, have you had conversations, obviously, after the police came and did a search warrant on your house for the gun case? You became aware that Riley was a suspect in the homicide of Emma Walker?
Yes.
And did you have conversations with Riley subsequent to then, or any time since you reported the gun stolen, about the whereabouts of that gun?
I don't recall. I'm sure we did, but
Let me put it this way. Has Riley ever admitted to you, his grandfather, that he stole your gun?
I'm sorry.
Pass the witness.
Mr. Rolfe, I want to go back to the conversation you and Mr. Allen just had about the people who live in your home currently. Is that Ashley, Amy, did you say Madison? Is that a yes?
Yes, sir.
And Riley lives there as well? Riley lives in your home now?
Correct.
Okay. And prior to him living in your home now, he also lived in your home sort of off and on between you and Seth Donlin. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're a little soft-spoken. I was trying to hear, and I just want to make sure I heard this right. You have known Riley his whole life?
Yes.
Okay. And how would you describe your relationship with Riley before the events in November of 2016?
Our grandfather couldn't love me more than it would be humanly possible.
Can you move up just a little bit to that microphone?
It would not be humanly possible to love me more than I do.
Okay. All right. Did you get your water?
I do.
Okay. And so throughout his childhood, you were around him?
Yes.
And how much were you around him throughout his childhood?
Considerable amount.
It's true that he was born on August 12, 1998.
Correct.
Were you there when he was born? Were you there when he was brought into the world?
Absolutely.
And how would you describe his relationship with his mother, Ashley?
Outstanding.
And how would you describe his relationship with his father?
With his real father.
Yes.
Very good at the moment. At this particular time.
How about historically, over time? Let me ask it this way. Seth Donald testified that he was involved in Riley's life from, I think, I can't remember exactly, maybe age 4 or 6 or something to that effect. Does that sound about right? Okay. And has Riley's dad been involved in his life prior to him graduating college or high school? His real dad?
No.
Okay. Are you aware if that bothered Riley?
I think it would bother any child to not have a relationship with their paternal parents. In my opinion.
Yes. And so, if I'll move to, I may jump around a little bit, Mr. Walker. I don't mean to, but I want to move forward to the time. Do you still have those exhibits up there with you? Do you have them? Oh, they're both in here. Okay. May speed this up just a little bit. one of the exhibits you just looked at, Mr. Walker, I think it may be 28 or 20 through the jury right now.
Yes, sir.
Is it reflected up here on the screen? Can you see that? You may have one a little closer there. Do you have one right there in front of you? And is this the receipt that you just looked at that's been introduced in one of these particular exhibits?
It is.
And so, my understanding of your testimony was that you bought this firearm on February 26, 2003, and paid $509 for it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you bought that particular firearm, did it have any other components to it? I think Mr. Allen referenced it as maybe a box and some magazines. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How many magazines did it come with?
That typically came with 2 magazines, but that's been way too long.
Had you purchased any other magazines since that time?
I may have had a high capacity mag.
Okay.
I can't recall.
So you think you may have had three particular magazines? Is that correct?
That's possible, yes.
And I think in the pictures, and I'll look here in just a second, but the pictures that you just looked at a second ago, did it have more than one magazine? How many magazines did it have in those
I
photographs?
saw that one.
Just one? I couldn't tell. I mean, I saw them earlier, but
That's how bad my memory is. I looked at it 5 minutes ago.
okay. I want to fast forward on this particular point, though. It's your testimony that the last time you knew you had this particular firearm was on or about November 18th of 2016.
That's correct.
And I know you paid $509 for it, what, 13 years ago? Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. But on November the 18th, on the question of the last time you laid your hands on them, when I asked you, assuming you had a willing buyer and a willing seller, and neither party under compulsion to buy or sell that particular firearm, what would it have been?
I'm going to object to a foundation for this question.
It's his gun. He can testify to the value of his gun. It's clear, and that's the proper way to ask the question.
That is the proper way that you get on your gun.
So, on or about November 18th of 2016, assuming you had a willing buyer and a willing seller and neither party under compulsion to buy or sell, what would the value of that particular gun have been worth?
$350, $400.
Now, is that with one magazine or 2 magazines or 3 magazines? Okay. You talked about that you had obtained your handgun carry permit, you believe, about 10 years ago.
Best I can remember.
Okay.
It's printed
On your,
color.
and tell the jury what you had to go through to get that handgun carry permit. What steps you had to go through.
Well, you have to attend an accredited class.
Okay.
And you have, video and some dialogue with a firearms instructor.
Okay.
And then you just watch video and then you go to the range and shoot.
Okay. And then you get a certificate and you have to send it off to Nashville or something?
You pay and they send it off to Nashville. You receive a handgun carry permit from the mail.
Okay. And why did you get a handgun carry permit?
Well, because it's illegal if you move around and you don't have one.
Do you know how old you have to be to get a handgun carry permit?
21, if I'm not mistaken.
This gun that you've testified to as being yours and to being the value of $350 to $400 on or about November 18th of 2016. How many times had you fired that gun?
To my knowledge, I've never put any rounds to that gun.
Okay.
that I recall.
Now, I understand you're a golfer. Okay, and I understand you like to clean your golf clubs. Is that right? And I also understand that you said you wouldn't take this particular firearm out of its holster unless you were cleaning it. Is that right?
That was, my point was that as a rule, the gun was always in the holster.
Yes. How often would you take it apart and clean it? How often would you clean it? Let me start there. How often would you clean it?
Well, since I didn't use the gun, maybe once a year.
Okay. So on average, up until 2016, it's been about, we'd say on average, 13 times.
So it's half that.
Okay, that's fine. And how would you clean that firearm?
Take it apart.
All right. So describe to the jury how you would take that firearm apart.
We just released the slide on the block. Remove the slide, took the barrel out, and the spring. And that gun's busted apart.
All right. So when you take it apart to clean it, how many pieces would you have taking it apart?
We had slide, barrel, and spring.
That's 3.
The only thing we had left is the bottom part.
The base.
Yeah, the bottom.
So 4 pieces basically when you took it apart. What did the spring look like when you take it apart? Is it a coiled spring or is it like a flat?
Well, it's a cold spring. It's got the round test on one end, and flat. Or it's got a diamond on one end and flat on the other.
Is it smooth when it's flat, like this business card? Is it smooth like that, or is when you say flat, is it flat like a hard surface like?
Got on the end.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the spring.
On the spring.
Yes.
Like that diamond.
Round
Right.
and coiled.
Right.
Okay. So, if we could. So, if we can take a look, I'm trying to approach a witness, Judge. I've got an image up here on the wall, Mr. Walker. Do you see that? You see it on your monitor as well? Okay. And is that the gun we've been talking about?
There's the,
And I want to see if I can go to one slide. Is that the serial number that was for that particular?
that's it.
So when you say that you took the slide off, what part of it, and you can actually touch that screen, Mr. Walker? Okay, and so that whole piece there is the slide,
That's a slide.
all right? And so then the barrel, when you say you took the barrel off, where would it be? Okay, and then where in that picture is the spring? I know you can't see a spring, right?
Yeah, it's in this area right
Okay, and that's the coiled spring, much like this spring here on this pen.
here. Correct.
I don't know if I can get it that, but like a little coil, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so this coiled spring, the coiled spring in it would be just the one that you would have handled, right? That would have been the only spring that you would have touched when you took this particular firearm apart.
That was right, yeah.
So did you have any idea that this firearm did not work properly if you'd never fired it?
No, sir.
And in this particular position here, there's a slide stop that holds that firearm open, right?
Correct.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 33, Mr. Walker. Is that the same picture that we've been talking about on this image on the wall?
It is.
I took it off. So if you would, do you have a marker up there? Okay. If you just mark where you're, just write a little line above the slide and put slide on it, just what we just talked about. Just write slide on where the slide is. And then, what are you writing there, Mr. Walker? Yeah. Okay. Judge, we'll move this in this next number two.
No objection.
Very well, let me see.
Thank you, Vice President. Did you hear that outside the election?
This is good idea.
To your knowledge, Mr. Walker, how many times has Riley Gaul ever fired that firearm before November 18, 2016?
To my knowledge, Riley Gaul's never fired a handgun here that I'm aware of.
And how about, to your knowledge, prior to November 18th of 2016, had he ever handled that firearm?
I think he had. I had shot him that gun.
Okay.
On occasion. And to my knowledge, he had handled the firearm.
But had never fired it?
No, sir.
Didn't know how to fire it?
Not to my knowledge, he had a clue.
You said that Riley would live with his mother with you all when the situation arose.
Correct.
And what kind of situations would have arose where Ashley and Riley would need to come live with you?
Well, through the years, if one of them were between jobs, and our home was always one of those places where they knew that they could kind of stay.
When Riley got the opportunity to go play for Maryville College, was he excited about that?
Absolutely.
And what excited him about being able to go play at Maryville College?
We just wanted to continue his football career, and he also wanted to further his education.
And did he get some help, some assistance to go play college football at Maryville?
He did.
You know how much? Do you remember?
Dollar,
Yes, sir.
roughly $40,000 a year.
And as a freshman at Marival, he was a freshman at Marival College in 2016. In 2016, he was a freshman at Marival.
That's correct.
Okay. And did he get any playing time as a freshman at Marival?
He did.
When, is it fair to say that Riley and Emma Walker started their relationship in about when he was 16 years old?
That sounds correct.
And how soon after they started their relationship did you get to meet Miss Emma?
I can't recall, but it was within months, maybe, 3 or 4 months or whatever.
You recall the first time you met her?
If I'm not mistaken, it was at a athletic function, but to the best of my knowledge.
And how was Riley about having started that relationship with Emma, Miss Emma?
He was just that.
And were you aware of any difficulties that Emma and Riley had during their 2-year course of their relationship?
I was.
Okay. And did Miss Emma make you aware of those difficulties?
Between her and Riley.
Yes. Did you know they were having difficulties from Miss Emma? Did she say anything to you, express anything to you?
I think she did, through the course of time.
Okay.
They were teenagers. But I don't recall.
What do you mean they were teenagers?
Well, just in regard to, teenagers have, on occasion, they have, issues and things arise.
Right. And then at some point in time, you said that Riley had a tremendous emotional crisis. That's what I just wrote that down. Is that did I write that down correctly? A tremendous emotional crisis.
Yes.
And you don't know what caused that tremendous emotional crisis.
No, sir.
And I think what you testified to on direct examination was that I think Mr. Allen asked what his emotional well-being was after going to Marival College, and you used that phrase.
Correct.
Is it still accurate?
Correct.
What was his physical characteristics as a result of this emotional state that he was in? Did he lose weight?
He did.
Did you see him eating less?
I did in my house. Of course, he was fed, at Marival.
Right.
I had a training dog.
Right. And what other characteristics did you see in Riley as part of this tremendous emotional crisis that you've called it?
Changes in disposition slightly, and that's about it.
So how would his disposition change?
Well, by that I mean the conversation that Riley and I had for as long as we've had, they didn't necessarily change, they were less frequent.
I'm sorry.
They didn't necessarily change, they were less frequent, the conversations that Riley and I had.
I got you. Did that concern you?
Yes.
Why?
Well, I was always concerned about his health and well-being.
Take you to the events you talked about at Marival College. Did you get word that there was a problem with Riley from a guy by the name of Max Siegel? You know a guy by the name of Max Siegel?
He was a football player as well,
At Marival.
that Marival.
And so what happened about that? Did you get a call from Max Siegel?
I can't remember if I got one or I got one, but one of us did.
Okay. And what was your response as a result of that phone call? What did you and Amy do?
We immediately got a car, went to the correct answer to the Blunt Memorial Hospital.
What did you determine had happened as a result of that call? What had happened as part of that incident?
What had happened?
Yes.
We were talking about the physician that Riley had taken pills. I can't recall what they were.
Is that what we are calling that he attempted to take his own life? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
That's the incident?
that's it.
Okay. And was that at a time where you say he was having this emotional state, this tremendous emotional crisis?
Yeah, something was different.
When you discovered your firearm missing out of your car on the 18th of November, were you concerned at all about Riley's safety in that firearm?
I was.
Why?
Well, because of the behavior that I'd seen in the close proximity to that, in my mind, if it was concerned.
Okay. Were you concerned about him hurting anybody else? Have you ever had a concern, even up to the time you reported your firearm of Riley Gaul, reporting your firearm missing on the 20th? Have you ever had a concern about Riley hurting anybody else?
I have not.
You summoned David Wise, I think you said, to comfort Riley the morning of November the 21st. So I understood your testimony. You asked David to come over and talk to Riley to comfort him? And at that time, did you suspect that Riley was responsible for anything happening to Emma?
I did not.
And even before that, when you showed up at Maryville College that morning when Ashley and Amy got there before you did on the 21st, did you have any concern, did you have any suspicion that Riley had been responsible for anything relating to Emma's death?
Absolutely not.
Why is that? Why did you not have a concern at those two times?
That never crossed my mind that Riley hurt.
That Riley would hurt her?
Yes, never crossed my mind.
Why not?
That wasn't his, that wasn't him.
Just a moment, Your Honor. When Mr. Allen asked you if you were pretty fond of Miss Emma, you said that'd be putting it mildly.
That's correct.
What do you mean by that, Mr. Walker?
Well, she was special,
You say us, you talking about you and Amy?
Yeah.
Okay. In what way?
Well, this has a relationship, you know, from the beginning as it got started, but kind of closer, and you can just tell that there was you know, pretty outstanding bond between the two of them. And, you know, not to mention that she was outstanding. I don't know how else to put it.
You don't know how else to put it. Mr. Walker, thank you.
Just one question. Mr. Walker, you mentioned, and he asked you about the gun in the holster, or the magazines, and the gun that you kept in the holster in your car, how many rounds, live rounds, would you keep in the magazine?
I mean, live rounds.
Yeah.
As a rule, I would keep 6 to 8, you know, not 8 or 10.
Okay. And did you keep it chambered? Meaning, did you keep one in the
Did not keep
chamber?
them out.
So you would have had to slid the rack to chamber the first round.
That's correct.
Okay.
No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Keep going.
I know you got to continue with it.
David Wise. David Wise? Oh, he's not here. If I were to skip him up, the next witness here, I've got about an hour and 50 long videotape that's going to be played with that witness, Judge. So. Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll release you now again. I'll caution you to be careful, read, listen to, or watch anything concerning this case. I have about in the morning, I think it was I can't get rid of it at 10. So please be here by 10 o'clock. And we'll try to start this back promptly at 10. Have a pleasant week.